The neon signs of the gas station flickered against the heavy Indiana sky, casting long, sickly yellow shadows over the asphalt. I sat on a cold metal bench, clutching a brown paper bag from CVS that held my blood pressure medication. At 67, I felt like my world was shrinking, closing in on me like the humid night air. People say a man my age, Arthur Miller, should be sitting on a porch in some quiet suburb, waiting for his grandkids to run across a manicured lawn. But my reality was this. A lonely bench, a rented room on the outskirts of Indianapolis, and a heart heavy with a name I hadn't spoken aloud in years. Marissa. My only daughter. It had been nearly 5 years since I'd seen her face. The last time we spoke, I had exploded with a rage that still tasted like ash in my mouth. She wanted to marry Caleb Vance, a man I knew in my gut was a shark in a cheap suit. I had screamed at her, "If you marry him, don't you ever call me Dad again." Those words were hot, stupid, and final. Marissa left. My wife, Martha, died shortly after from a broken heart more than the cancer. I sold our family home in the suburbs and moved to a cramped apartment where the walls were thin and the memories were thick. A few years ago, Marissa reached out. She was married, pregnant, and Caleb was struggling to come up with the down payment for a condo in a nice part of the city. Despite the lingering sting in my chest, I couldn't ignore the tremor in her voice. I emptied my 401k, took what was left of Martha's life insurance, and wired every cent to Caleb's account. I wanted them to have a home, a real American dream. After that, her number became unreachable. It was as if Caleb had built a wall around her using my own money. Tonight, after a late checkup at the clinic, I had hopped off the city bus at this station. My legs were aching, a dull throb that demanded a rest before the final mile home. I bought a bottle of Dasani and watched the world go by. In the far corner of the lot, a few old transit vans were parked haphazardly. My eyes, tired as they were, caught on a dark green Ford Econoline. The interior light was dim, but I saw her. A young woman was slumped against the window, her head resting on the glass. Her hair was a mess, and she was wrapped in a thin, worn-out hoodie. In the back bench seat, a small boy, maybe 7 years old, was curled up under a ragged fleece blanket. My chest tightened. The way she gripped her tattered handbag, as if it were the only anchor she had left in a stormy sea, was too familiar. I stood up. My old knees protested, but I walked toward the van. As I got closer, the features became clear. The line of her nose, the curve of her jaw, the way her brow furrowed even in sleep. It was Marissa. I tapped softly on the window. She blinked, her eyes opening slowly, empty for a few seconds before they found mine. In the back, the boy stirred, murmuring something I couldn't hear. I saw those eyes, the same ones that had glared at me with defiance years ago. "Marissa," I said, my voice husky and cracking. She squinted, as if I were a ghost. "Dad?" I opened the unlocked sliding door. The smell of stale coffee and sweat hit me. Up close, she looked worse. Her cheeks were hollow, her lips chapped, and she was far too thin. The boy in the back had her face. He had my face. My grandson. I sat on the edge of the step. 1,000 questions hammered at my brain, but one came out first. Where is the condo I paid for? Where is the baby girl you just had? Don't you have 2 children? Marissa froze. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall, they just sat there like water in a cracked glass. The boy woke up, looked at me for a second, then lowered his head and hugged his knees. He looked vacant, his movements slow, as if loud noises were a physical threat. "Marissa," I repeated, softer this time. "Talk to me." Her lips trembled. "Caleb. And his mother, Mrs. Vance. They changed the locks on the condo, Dad. They told me I have no rights." They kicked me and Leo out. They kept my baby, Sophie, inside. I can't even get past the lobby. Those names, Caleb Vance, Evelyn Vance. The people I feared would hurt her had finally done it. How long have you been out here? I asked. 6 weeks, she whispered, looking at her feet. We sleep here. The guy who owns this van, Mr. Rodriguez, he's kind. He lets us stay here overnight as long as I help clean the vans in the morning. But it's not enough for a deposit on a place. I didn't know where to go. I wanted to ask why she hadn't found me, but I looked at Leo. What's wrong with him, Marissa? She stroked the boy's hair. Leo has a developmental delay. The doctors say he's on the spectrum. He needs therapy, Dad. He's scared of everything. Caleb and Evelyn. They were ashamed of him. They called him a broken child. That sentence made my blood boil. Ashamed of a grandson like Leo, while they were the ones who were rotten to the core. Something inside me hardened into steel. I opened the door wider. Get out, I said, my voice firm. Come with me. Marissa looked at me with a mix of confusion and terror. Where, Dad? I looked her straight in the eye. For the first time in years, everything was clear. To make them pay for what they did. And I know exactly how to do it. That night, my small apartment felt even smaller. Marissa sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, while Leo slept on a thin mattress ID pulled out from the closet. I handed her a mug of hot tea. Drink, I said. Then tell me everything. From the start. It started back at IU, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I met Caleb at the business school. He was charming, wore the right clothes, seemed like he had a future. I thought he was my ticket to a good life. And back then, we were fighting so much. I just wanted to prove I could do it without you. She told me how Caleb's mother, Evelyn, seemed supportive at first. But when Leo was born and the diagnosis came, the mask slipped. Caleb started staying late at the office, drinking, coming home angry. Evelyn would tell her, don't go running to your father, you'll just be a burden to him, and he never liked us anyway. When Caleb struggled with the condo down payment, that was the trap. I called you in secret, Dad. Even though you were still mad, you sent the money. That money got us into the unit at the Meridian. But Caleb put the deed in his name. He said since he was the one with the career, it made sense for the mortgage. I was too tired to fight. Then they took her phone. They took her ID, Sophie's birth certificate, Leo's medical records. They said I was unstable. When Sophie was born, I had postpartum depression. I was exhausted. One night, I put her in the crib and cried, saying I couldn't do it anymore. Caleb recorded me on his iPhone. He told the building security I was a danger to the kids. The next day, he sent me out for diapers with Leo, and when I came back, the locks were changed. The security guard told me to leave or he'd call the cops for trespassing. Why didn't you look for me? I asked. I didn't have your new address, Dad. I thought you were still in the old house in Franklin. And I was ashamed. I thought you'd just tell me I told you so. The pain flared in my chest. I took her hand. Listen to me, Marissa. I made a huge mistake when I walked away, but what Caleb and his mother did is criminal. You aren't crazy. You're a mother, and you're my daughter. And as for being old. If I have to spend my last breath fighting for you and my grandkids, that's not a burden. It's my job. I looked at the folder ID pulled from the top of my dresser. It was a blue plastic accordion file I hadn't opened since Martha died. Inside were the bank statements, the proof of the wire transfer to Caleb Vance's account, clearly marked for Marissa's home. Caleb thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, I muttered. He thinks because I'm an old man in a rental, I'll just roll over. He's wrong. Leo stirred in his sleep, clutching a frayed stuffed bear. Leo wants toast, Marissa whispered, seeing him wake. Leo will have whatever he needs, I said. But first, I need to call someone. An old friend from the construction days who went to night school for law. Sam Higgins. He knows how the system works, and he knows me. Marissa looked terrified. If Caleb finds out we have a lawyer, he'll sue for full custody. He'll use those recordings. Let him, I said. We're done hiding in vans. We're going to fight until they're the ones looking for a place to sleep. The next morning, I drove Marissa and Leo to a small law firm in downtown Indianapolis. Sam Higgins, my old buddy, looked nothing like he did back in the days when we were pouring concrete together on construction sites. He was wearing a sharp gray suit, and on his desk sat a nameplate that read, "Attorney at Law Family Practice." He carefully examined the bank statements I had brought. "Arthur, this is good news," Sam said, rubbing his chin. "A transfer of this size with the memo for Marissa's home gives us leverage. In the state of Indiana, this can be viewed as a purchase money resulting trust or a conditional gift for your daughter. The fact that Caleb put everything in his own name smells like fraud. But the main issue is the child. Sophie." At the mention of her daughter's name, Marissa flinched. "They won't give her to me, Sam. They say I'm crazy." "We need to move fast," Sam said, pressing a button on his intercom. "First, we file for an emergency temporary custody order and a writ of assistance to return the child to her mother. Simultaneously, we file a suit for partition of property and the eviction of Caleb from the apartment your father paid for." The next few days were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I got Marissa and my grandson a room at a nearby Holiday Inn so they wouldn't have to stay in my cramped apartment. Leo began to slowly come around, though he was still terrified of loud noises and constantly asked, "We aren't going back to that van, are we?" On Thursday, we drove to the Meridian. It was a high-end residential complex with mirrored glass and a concierge in the lobby. Caleb's black Lexus was parked near the entrance. "Are you sure?" I asked Marissa. "Yes, Dad. I want my daughter back." As soon as we entered the lobby, the security guard, the same one who had kicked Marissa out 6 weeks ago, started toward us. "Ma'am, I told you." "Step aside, officer," Sam Higgins said, stepping forward and flashing his ID along with the court order. "We have a court order to escort Mrs. Vance to her legal residence for the return of a minor child. If you interfere, it will be considered obstruction of justice." The guard hesitated and backed off. We took the elevator to the 12th floor. The door was opened by Evelyn Vance, Caleb's mother. She was in a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled, holding little Sophie. When she saw us, she tried to slam the door, but I jammed my heavy work boot into the frame. "Get out!" she screamed. "In calling the police. Marissa is unstable, she abandoned her baby." "The police are already on their way, Evelyn," I said calmly, stepping inside. "And they aren't coming for us." Caleb walked out from the living room, looking sleep-deprived and disheveled. Seeing me, he smirked that greasy smile of his. "Arthur. Finally crawled out of your hole. Look at your daughter, she's a ghost. She belongs in a psych ward, not in my apartment." "In my apartment, Caleb," I corrected him. "In the apartment bought with the money you stole from my family." Marissa stepped forward and, in a firm voice I hadn't heard from her in years, said, "Give me Sophie, Evelyn. Right now." At that moment, 2 Indianapolis Metro police officers appeared in the hallway. Sam quickly explained the situation. Evelyn began to wail, putting on a performance about the poor abandoned darling, but the court papers and the evidence that Marissa had been living in a van against her will due to threats outweighed her drama. When the officer took Sophie from Evelyn's arms and handed her to Marissa, I felt a massive weight lift off my soul. The baby started to cry, burying her face in her mother's shoulder, and Marissa sobbed right along with her. "This isn't over," Caleb hissed as the police asked him and his mother to vacate the premises until the property ownership was settled. "I have recordings. It'll prove she's an unfit mother." "Good luck, kid," I said as he walked away. "My lawyers are already looking into your bank accounts. Turns out you've been spending company reimbursements on online gambling. I think your bosses would be very interested to hear about that." Caleb went pale. He didn't know that Sam had spent the last few days digging up enough dirt on him to fill a couple of criminal indictments. When the door closed behind them, silence fell over the apartment. Leo cautiously walked up to Marissa and touched his sister's tiny hand. "Mommy, are we home now?" he asked. Marissa looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw that little girl I had once taught to ride a bike. "Yes, honey. We're home." But the fight was just beginning. We had a long legal battle ahead for the deed and the final divorce. But now we had a roof over our heads, and most importantly, we were together. 3 months had passed. The Indiana winter was brutal, but inside the 12th floor apartment, it was warm. I had moved in with my daughter, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because they needed me now more than ever. Caleb Vance lost his job at the finance firm a week after our confrontation. An audit triggered by our request confirmed the embezzlement of funds. To stay out of prison, he signed away his rights to the apartment and agreed to supervised visitation only. Evelyn Vance moved in with her sister in Ohio, and we haven't heard from her since. Today was a big day. Leo and I were sitting on the living room rug, building a massive Lego set. "Grandpa, look! I built a tower!" he shouted happily. His progress was amazing. With the help of the good therapists we could finally afford, Leo had started speaking in full sentences and stopped jumping at every sound. Marissa came out of the kitchen carrying a tray of sandwiches. She looked different. She had gained some healthy weight, her hair had its shine back, and her eyes held the confidence of a woman who had reclaimed her life. "Dad," Sam called. "The deed is officially in my name. All of Caleb's debts were vacated by the court as fraudulent." I nodded, feeling a pleasant exhaustion. "I guess we won, honey." "No, Dad," she said, setting the tray down and sitting on the floor beside me. "We didn't just win. We survived. And I can never thank you enough for not walking past that van at the gas station." I looked out the window at the lights of nighttime Indianapolis. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over, that I would die a lonely old man consumed by bitterness. But fate gave me a second chance. That evening, after the kids fell asleep, I sat in the armchair for a long time, watching Marissa sleeping between Leo and little Sophie. Their breathing was steady and calm. There were no more locks that could be changed in secret. There were no more doors that could be slammed in our faces. I brushed a lock of hair from Marissa's forehead. "I almost lost you forever at that gas station," I whispered. "But seeing you here now, that's enough." For the first time in years, my chest wasn't tight with rage. Our life was still a work in progress, and there was a lot of rebuilding to do, but we were standing on our own 2 feet. Those who tried to trample us now knew the bitterness of the fall. And my job as a father and grandfather remained simple. Never let us become like them. This story taught me that karma always finds a way. Those who treat family as a burden, who believe they can bully the weak without consequence, will eventually face the fallout of their own actions. And those who fight with love and dignity will always find a way to rise, no matter how hard the road. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. If it resonated with you, give it a like, comment on what touched you the most, and be sure to mention where you're from. Subscribe to the channel, there are plenty more stories to come.